Merry middle of the month, YouTube. You know what that means. It's comics time. This month was actually a pretty decent haul for a couple reasons. They revived some series that had kind of ended. Well, you already know Transformers revived last month, but now G.I. Joe has also been revived, and it is starting over again. So we got a couple issues, one each in those realms, and also a bit of Turtles, and then a bit of back issues of Turtles for some stuff that I'd been missing. Plus the Void Rivals series has been picking up steam. That's where we're going to start with Void Rivals. And let me just kind of qualify this, because I wasn't sure what this series was, because when I go to my comic shop, they know which series I want every month, and they'll pull one off the shelves when it comes in and put it in my bag and make sure I get every issue that I need. When Void Rivals showed up in my bag, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, it's none of the series I want. So I think they didn't give me issue 1, they gave me issue 2, so I still don't have the first issue. In issue 2, I read through it and I'm like, what the hell is this? And then I kind of gave up on it. And then I recently discovered it is part of the Transformers universe. It's part of the Energon universe. So there is some Transformers content that's going to be coming in it. So I was like, oh, okay. So I went back and I didn't get number 1 because I couldn't remember if I had it or not, but I knew that I only had number 2. So I got, or that I had stopped at number 2. So I got 3, 4, 5, 6. That's where we start today. So Void Rivals issue 3, issue 4, issue 5, and issue 6. So over these 4 issues, we follow a guy named Derek, who is from a place called Agora, and a female named Salila, who is from a place called Zertonia. These worlds are actually part of these two nations or whatever are part of the same world, and it's this weird ring thing with these kind of buffer bands in between. It's a really cool looking planet, if you want to call it a planet. And these two factions have been warring with each other for I don't know how long, but for a long time. That's all they've known, sort of thing. So when issue 3 picks up, they are trying to escape from a guy we see in the Transformers cartoon, the original Transformers cartoon. He's like a kind of shady swindler, black market dealing pigman, let's call him. He kind of looks like the guy from Link, Ganondorf or Ganon or whoever he is, like the big walking pigman. He looks a lot like that, and he's commandeered this vessel, kind of taken it over as it was, I think, adrift in space, and these two beings are actually on the vessel, and they team up to defeat this guy, and I forget his name. Shit, it's on the tip of my tongue. They team up to defeat this guy, but at the same time, they're kind of from these warring factions, so they don't really want anything to do with each other. But through their adventures of escaping this guy and whatever, they kind of come to at least a cooperative kind of state of being. So they escape this guy and they're trying to find their way off this ship. They run into a Quintesson, one of the guys with the long heads with all the tentacles, not the judge guys with all the faces or anything like that. So they kind of he's like, I can get you off of the ship, I have a ship. So he takes them to his ship, but this pig guy is there, and he's like, you're not going to trust this Quintesson, are you? Like, he does this and that and the other thing. And they're like, oh, fuck, okay, you can have him then. We're just going to go take that ship and blast off. So they take off. Meanwhile, Pig Boy takes control of, or takes the Quintesson captive and goes to try and peddle him somewhere else. So as the two, Solila and Derek, or whatever his name is, escape on the ship, they decide, oh, where should we go? We can't go to each other's worlds together because our nations hate each other. So let's just take an escape pod and go our separate ways back to our own nations. But in the end, Solila gets the drop on Derek and knocks him out, and she steers the ship towards her own planet of her nation of Zertonia. So they land, and she's applauded for, you know, making her way back and bringing them a captive, a pilot, from their rival nation, and he's thrown in the brig, and eventually interrogated by their what's he called? Not a prime minister, but their premier. But before he goes to do that, he commends Celila for her actions and for bringing them an Agorian, and he goes, "We're gonna throw him in the brig. We're not gonna kill him." And she goes, "Okay, good." And he's like, "What? Like, you have feelings for this guy?" So he's starting to be sus of their relationship. And she's like, "No, we don't have a friendship, but we had to team together to escape, and I kind of don't want to see him hurt after all that." So then she ends up being thrown in the brig for her kind of insolence or whatever, right? In the meantime, the pig guy goes off on a couple of side missions. This is the first time we see a Transformer. He goes to Cybertron and tries to sell the Quintesson to Shockwave, and Shockwave's, "Get the fuck out of here. We don't want that filth here on Cybertron. How dare you even come here?" So he's turned aside by Shockwave, and then he eventually goes to the Quintessons on Quintessa, I'm assuming, and tries to sell that Quintesson back to them, and they're like, "Oh ho ho, we don't want this filth, but we're going to take him anyways, and we're also going to take you for judgment." So he's like, "Oh shit, what did I do? I'm in trouble now," right? So that's kind of where he ends off. In the meantime, back on Zertonia, they're both tossed into jail. Well, Derek is out being, I think his name's Derek, but Darak, something like that. Or maybe it's Dalek or something. I can't remember his name. But anyway, he's being interrogated by the Premier. And after his latest beatdown, this little kid comes out of the shadows and is like, "Hey, I got your stuff. I can get you out of here." So he's kind of rescued by this strange kid. And he's like, "What is going on?" So he's brought to this group who have freed him. They're like some sort of organized resistance that want to end the manufactured aggression between these two nations that have been holding them apart for so long, and see them brought together in peace and harmony. And so that's why they rescued him. They want him to play a part in this thing as well. But he's like, "I'm not doing it without Celila." And they're like, "She got you thrown in the brig. She didn't even care." He's like, "I don't care." So that's kind of where we leave off with him wanting them to get Celila back, and some interesting events on the horizon, because it kind of ends with the Premier being made aware that both of them have escaped from containment when Celila is rescued by this Liberation Front or whatever it is, and the Premier receives word that both of his kind of captives have escaped, and he's like, "God damn!" He's so pissed off, and he says, "We need to get them back. We need to prevent the unification," or something like that. So it sounds like some sort of event that can be put into play, and that these people might play a part in. We need to prevent the coming of Goliant. So that Goliant sounds like he's big, bad, and angry and mean, and is going to eat everybody in sight. So I think there might be some sort of big event coming if Goliant, whoever he or she is, gets loose. There could be trouble for these people. So can't wait to see where the rest of this goes. Once I decided to get back into it, I did start to enjoy the story more than that first issue, just because I was so confused as to why do I have this comic in my stack. But I ended up liking it after reading through, all those other issues. So yeah, I am excited to see where it goes next, and I guess we'll find out in a month, right? Okay, next up is some turtles, and like I said, there's a lot of turtles this month. They at my comic shop, they had missed a few issues here and there. Forgot to put them in my bags, and when I went to find them afterwards, they had already sold out of them, so I had to acquire them by other means after the fact. So a few of those issues arrived, so they're included in here, as well as some new ones. So like I said, we've got quite a bit of turtles because of that. So first up, issue 3 of the Turtles Stranger Things team up. And in this one, I think Donatello and Dustin and Eleven have taken Baxter Stockman captive, and they're trying to get out of him. Like, just what have you done? Like, why are there demo dog, or I forget, like the cross between the Mousers and the creatures in the Upside Down that the Stranger Things kids always run into. It's that hybrid. So they're asking Baxter, like, how did you do this? Why did you do this? You know, what is going on? How do we stop this sort of thing? And of course, Baxter is giving them the runaround. But 11 has that psychic ability where she's able to kind of play him and get more out of him than he would otherwise want to give. In the meantime, as they're doing that and trying to get some answers from Baxter, Mikey and Leo, I think, are trying to get to the Upside Down to rescue some people. They're fighting through a subway, through lots of the creatures from the Upside Down, all those horrible monsters, and eventually come across a bunch of dead Utroms. And one of the Utroms, after one of them lights it on fire, wakes up and takes off, and they're like, "Oh, where's he going?" And it's like, no, he's going to join the big creature. I forget its name. To be part of the big creature, the Mind Flayer. That's it. So, which is the ultimate baddie in this. So, and that's kind of where that issue ends off. And then, of course, I've since finished it with the other issues that I've mentioned. But yeah, I had to get that kind of in between, so I knew exactly what the hell went on. Next up, issue 3 of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Power Rangers team up. So in this one, there's a battle going on in Angel Grove. Rita and those guys, Bebop, Rocksteady, are raiding the Power Rangers base, and they can't hold back all the forces at bay. So at the last second, they send Zordon's consciousness away in a teleporter, and they think they've got him away in time. But eventually, all that stuff is destroyed, and they're kind of worried that maybe they didn't get him out of there in time. So Rita eventually shows up, the might of their forces shows up, and eventually the Turtles, or the Power Rangers and stuff, are forced to retreat. And eventually everybody kind of gets together and is like, a couple days later, is like, they put this plan into action, like, kind of, what are we going to do? Like, and the Power Rangers are like there's too much, up against too many forces here between everybody, between Rita, between Shredder, blah, blah, blah. And so they're like, maybe we need to be more like the Turtles. So they set up their morphers somehow, so that when they morph into their Power Ranger mode, they actually mutate into their dinosaur counterparts. So they become a lot more powerful and are able to take the fight to Rita and all those guys, and Krang and whatever. And in the end, the Turtles and Shredder end up, oh yeah, because I forgot, Shredder's not a bad guy. Well, he is a bad guy, but he's actually working with them, because Krang has been unhappy with Shredder's performance. So Shredder's pissed at Krang, and he's wanting to rule the world. He's wanting to take Krang down, and so he's momentarily on the same page as the Turtles. So he kind of joins their team, and the last thing we see is Shredder, excuse me, and the Turtles entering a portal to go to Dimension X. And of course, the series lasts for 2 more issues after that, which I've already reviewed in the past, because that was one of the ones I had to get the back issue of. Next up, the 5th and final issue of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Street Fighter team up, which is one of my favorites so far. So as this issue picks up, the fighting in the casino or whatever is still going on. Shredder's on a rampage, and the Turtles are fighting him off, and Street Fighter gang is fighting him off. Eventually, Shredder comes across M. Bison, and then the real fight begins. He goes, finally, a worthy opponent. And so they're squaring off. The Turtles and the Street Fighter gang all kind of reunite as one big team, and they're like, okay, what do we do here? And eventually, the bomb that M. Bison had set to drop on Manhattan, that was made from the power of people like Raph and Chun-Li, their powers that we have, their anger. Raph kind of channels that power into himself and becomes like super, oh, excuse me, I'm getting tired all of a sudden. He gets super purple and super powerful, and then he basically says, enough of this, go away you two. And he basically smashes Shredder and M. Bison, so they go flying for miles and miles and end up landing in the ocean. far away, and Raph basically saves the day with these actions. So, and at the end of the issue, at the end of the series, the Street Fighter gang come to see the turtles off at the train station or whatever it is, or the bus station, however they're getting home back to New York City, and they each have their moments with each other. Mikey and Chun-Li have a little moment, blah blah blah. And as the series concludes, we see Raph and Guile fighting on the top of the train or the bus or whatever it is, as they make their way to New York. So apparently Guile's going with them, but the other Street Fighter gang stayed behind. So happy endings all around, right? Except for me. Next up, a couple more issues I had to back order. Issue 4 and issue 5 of the Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures series. So I do have one more after this already, but I had to go back and get these two. So basically, this is a 2-issue kind of team up between the Turtles and the Punk Frogs. So in the first issue, it starts off with a brief cutscene between Shredder and Krang. Shredder has obtained this kind of rare piece of an asteroid, this rock, that they're trying to get into to access its power or whatever it is to do with this thing that's so valuable. But they can't. The thing's pretty much indestructible. So they eventually want to go after the, what's it called? The atomic scalpel or something like that. Some sort of device that they think will help them with this thing. But it is actually not in their possession right now. And when they look on the map, it's in Florida. Now, Shredder goes after it, of course. But so do the Turtles, knowing what Shredder and Krang are up to. So Raph and Donnie, I think it is. Yeah. Raph and Donnie head to Florida and meet up with the Punk Frogs and end up facing down a group of villains and stuff. And Leatherhead basically is who is in possession of the scalpel, and they fight him to kind of a draw. And in the action, the scalpel kind of skitters away amongst all the fighting, and Shredder actually scoops it up. He's hiding in a tree. He's been there all along. He gets the scalpel. He takes off. It's now in his possession. In the meantime, in the next issue, we see Napoleon Bonafrog and Genghis Frog travel to New York to help the Turtles with their problem. Well, 2 of the Turtles are down helping the Punk Frogs with that problem. So basically, they go on patrol. They're having fun. They're showing the Frogs New York City. When Baxter Stockman kind of makes himself known, and he's pissed at the Turtles. He's pissed that they now have frog friends, because the only thing he hates more than a turtle is a frog. And so he basically drops in on Channel 6 when they're having a meeting and kidnaps April O'Neil and uses her as bait to draw the Turtles to a theater that he's been kind of hiding out in. And of course it's a trap. The Turtles know that. But there's only 2 Turtles, right? So Leo and Mikey show up and try to do battle with Baxter, but he's planned for that, and he uses this device he's created to kind of zap them and immobilize them in the theater, but then realizes, uh-oh, there's only 2 Turtles. Where are the other 2? And then that's when the 2 Punk Frogs that came to visit the Turtles in New York make their presence known and basically take Baxter out and free Leo and Mikey and save the day, sort of thing, and rescue April. So yeah, it was kind of a 2-issue team up between the 2 teams, which is always fun because the Punk Frogs are a pretty cool. They were a pretty cool addition to the Turtles originally. Everybody loves the Punk Frogs, but there's so many great characters in Turtles. It's unbelievable, right? So last up, issue 145 of the regular ongoing Turtles series, and in this one, Leo, Donnie, April, Venus, Bob, Lita, they're all hanging out at the farmhouse, and where Don said he needed to go to do some more work and kind of finalize this work with the time-space continuum that he'd be doing. So they help him set up this kind of portal in the middle of the forest that he leaves open for whatever experiments he's doing. And they go back to the farmhouse, and Leo's kind of worried. He's like, you think it's okay to leave like a portal wide open in the middle of the forest? And Don's like, yeah, it's protected with the sigils and blah, blah, blah. It's fine. In the middle of the night, this red-robed figure comes to Bob, who is like a baboon kind of mutant, and plants these doubts in his mind about the Turtles and whatnot, and says, you know what? I'm future you, in the future, you don't get turned back into your normal self. You remain a mutant the rest of your life. But I can change that. You just need to come out to the forest with me and sabotage this little setup Donnie's got going. And Bob's like, no, I can't. But then eventually the temptation is too much and he goes. Um, so Bob is out there with this future Bob, and eventually future Bob pushes regular Bob through the portal not long after Donnie suddenly wakes up and realizes, he just gets the sense that something's wrong. So him and Venus rush to the scene as Bob is being pushed into the portal, and they do battle with this red-robed figure, this future Bob. Venus is then pushed through the portal, and then eventually at the end, Donnie is pushed in through the portal. So all three of them go through, and in the meantime, the portal kind of explodes or implodes or whatever, but creates a big ruckus in the sky. All the people back at the farmhouse, like Leo in April, oh, I'm so sorry, are all like, what the fuck was that, right? And don't know exactly what's going on. Flash forward to what's happening with Venus and Donnie and Bob. They are falling through this time portal and go back 12 million years, and they're basically falling into the ocean, right into the oncoming jaws of a megalodon. So, not great. And as they fall towards this shark, the shark kind of morphs into that malevolent being we know as Armagon that has played a part earlier in the series. And Donnie's like, oh my god, Armagon's not just like a complete asshole, but I helped create him. That's what this kind of revelation does to him. And that's kind of where things leave off, with Donnie realizing that his tampering with time, space, blah, 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 all that stuff is what ultimately created this monster that seemingly can't be stopped. But we are talking about the Turtles here, so we'll see if they can manage to do it. Maybe not in the next issue, but hopefully very soon down the line. But either way, we'll pick it back up in January. Next up, and I'm loving this series so far, Image has done a really good job with it so far, issue 2 of the new ongoing Transformers series. This one starts off kind of more peaceful. Optimus Prime kind of is out in the wilderness after they escaped from the Decepticons in the first issue. And he's out in the forest exploring and looking at how beautiful Earth is. And without even realizing it, he steps on a baby deer and kills it, and is like, oh, Jesus Christ, I didn't even see it. Like, he feels so bad. And he kind of mourns the loss of this deer. And as he's doing that, Spike comes out and joins him, and they start talking, and Optimus starts asking Spike about Earth and whatever, and Spike explains the concept of family and whatever, and Optimus is like, oh, I know family. And then he relates to Spike the Transformers' plight on Cybertron, how the Civil War broke out, and how the Decepticons were taking it to the Autobots, and their numbers had dwindled, so they're like, we got to get out of here and find somewhere else to regroup and whatever, before we can take Cybertron back. And what led ultimately to Megatron trying to intercept the Ark as it was leaving Cybertron and cause the big crash into Earth, and ultimately their reactivation all those millions of years later, which, you know, Spike was partially responsible for. So now, not long after they have this conversation, the Decepticons attack the refinery where Spike's dad works. Skywarp, Soundwave, and Starscream, I believe, land and start draining energy from the refinery to make Energon. And they start causing all sorts of havoc for the humans. They kill a bunch of people. And in the meantime, the military is made aware that there's a situation at the refinery, and so they scramble a fighter jet, and we see this jet turn tail and head towards the area and get into a bit of a confrontation with Starscream. After they're hit, the two pilots eject, and this is what's cool about the series, is that it's pretty gnarly sometimes. Like, one of my favorite parts is, like, these two pilots eject, you see them come out of the cockpit in their parachutes, and then you see them coming down, and then you see the one guy the next panel is like this one guy in his seat in the air with his parachute, and Starscream's face is like right in his, and Starscream's like, ah. And then the next thing you see is him going like, and squishing the human like a bug, and there's like black blood flying everywhere. I was like, oh my god, like that's kind of cool, because normally in these GI Joe and Transformers things, like it's very PG, right? So it's kind of fun to see a little bit more grisliness and nastiness going on. So I thought that was kind of cool. That's been one of my favorite aspects of this series so far, is it's a little more gritty, let's say. And then the other pilot though escapes, and as he launches this little glider thing on his backpack, he flies by the panel, and his code name on his shirt is Duke. That's right, Duke. You know Duke from G.I. Joe? Oh shit, they're going there. They're going there. So I was psyched when I saw that. I actually did a little, and yeah, I love G.I. Joe and Transformers team ups. It's amazing. They've been doing it forever, and it works. Keep on doing it. So yeah, the last thing we see is Spike's dad escapes from the Decepticons and goes to Spike's girlfriend Carly's house, I think it is, and gets kind of weaponed up and whatever. And Carly actually, Spike went with Optimus Prime. Carly went back to check on her dad. So Spike's dad is like, I'm sorry, Carly, they killed your dad, and he's all ready to go. And that's kind of where things leave off in this issue. So amazing issue, fast paced, lots of death and gnarliness. And I can't wait to see where it goes from here, especially with Duke in the picture. Okay, last up, issue 1 of the new ongoing G.I. Joe series. This is a pretty cool issue. In it, there are 2 waves of Joes approaching Cobra Island. We've got Wild Bill and Duke in a C-130 plane heading towards the island, and on the water we have Cutter piloting the whale hovercraft with a bunch of other Joes on site. There's Stalker, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, and also they have Cobra Commander in their possession. Now, on Cobra Island, Serpentor, the maniac that he is, has decided he's going to detonate this weird bomb. It's like a DNA bomb or something like that on Cobra Island, and Dr. Mindbender is like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're going to turn us into zombies. Like, that's what this bomb does. He's like, don't be a bitch, it'll only make us stronger, or whatever the hell he preaches to Mindbender. And but during the fighting, the C-130, one of its engines gets hit, and it goes into a dive that Wild Bill and Duke, they know there's a really good chance they're not going to be able to pull out of it. So they're kind of on a collision course with the whale. So they radio the whale and say, turn back, get the hell out of here. We've been hit. We're going to go in hard. You know, save yourselves, kind of thing. So Cutter turns the whale around and they take off. In the meantime, Cobra Commander gets loose and attacks Laura, the former Crimson Guardsman, and Wade Collins, and ultimately, who is the new Snake Eyes' father, and ultimately kills Wade during his escape attempt, gets on a little jet ski or whatever, and heads towards Cobra Island. Now, Duke and Wild Bill are able to finally gain enough altitude and regain control of the C-130 to get it out of trouble and get it on its way back away from Cobra Island, because the bomb is about to blow, and the bomb eventually does blow. And what we see is literally just what Dr. Mindbender was talking about. All of a sudden, there's a lot of like these zombie-looking mutant motherfuckers all kind of hanging out. And we don't see a lot of the zombie faction afterwards, but we do see that, you know, Serpentor's got kind of a glazed over eye, and Mindbender's got some boils on his head or something like that. So I can't wait to see more of what happens to the zombified people on Cobra Island, because they don't give you really much of a look into it at the end of this issue. But kind of a cool way to start the issue, right? Like a typical kind of, oh, they're raiding Cobra Island. Oh, wait, there's a mutant zombie bomb in this one. So, okay, that's a different direction, right? So you got to appreciate when they keep it fresh and do some different stuff, and just create more unique and diverse and more thrilling Joe adventures to read. So can't wait to see where number 2 goes. Again, something we'll find out in the new year. Toodles!
Meow.